Aruban authorities are now working together in the hotel murder investigation. Now, authorities hope that cooperation in the Stephanie Flores Ramirez case will lead to new information about the disappearance of the American teenager Natalie Holloway. And in-session correspondent Jean Casares has been following this story. She's live right now in Lima. She joins us from down there. And Jean, we know the Aruban authorities are expected to speak with Vandersloot. Have we heard anything more about when this is actually supposed to happen?
Well, here's what we're learning from here on the ground in Lima. The court that this is all in is the Juzgado here in Lima. It is actually equivalent to our district court. And His Honor Carlos Morales Cordova is the judge. We have seen him in the courthouse rushing here and there. He has declined any comment to us, but we are finding out that there is a press release that is going to come out today diagramming and describing possibly a timeline and more information on exactly what is happening. Now, the next process we do know here in Lima, and this is according to the criminal procedure in Lima, is that Joran Vandersloot will have to appear before the judge to give a statement. Now, this is something he cannot decline. He must do it. His statement, of course, is that of his choosing, but that will be the next process in what is now a criminal case in Lima. Probably 4 to 6 months down the line, there will be the first hearing. It must be open to the public. That is because that Lima is part of the international treaties which demand the civil rights of an individual, of a defendant, and it requires public hearings here in Lima, Peru.
Wow. Can't wait to see that public hearing. And Jean, what can you tell us about the circumstances surrounding the departure of Vandersloot's private attorney?
Well, what we know is that he wanted off the case. He told us personally he was getting threats for his life. He did a few telephone interviews locally, but you never saw him on camera at all. Now we've confirmed that there is a new attorney, a private attorney, but the name has not been released, which is interesting. There were a lot of rumors that it was a very high-profile defense attorney. We found those rumors to be false by calling attorneys' offices. But here is what I'm learning about the legal system here. In the United States, you want a high-profile attorney if you're a defendant. You want someone that is so reputable, well-known, that can get you a lot further in the courts many times. But here in Peru, it's very different because once the case goes to prosecutors, it then goes to the judge. So His Honor Cordova has the case now, and it is the judge that is the fact finder, does the investigation. Prosecutors do too, but it is the judge that is foremost of importance. So the quality of your defense lawyer is not as important as it is in the United States.
Wow, Jean, that is amazing to hear, that it's so different in Peru than it is here. I want to bring in in-session legal contributor Midwin Charles. She joins us now, and folks, I got to tell you, she's right here in Atlanta with me, which is so great. It's always so great to see you.
Good to see you too, Ryan.
You know, Midwin, this is very interesting because Jean's right. And here in America, we want the best and brightest as our lawyers, but there you got the judge doing this fact-finding mission. Does that in any way affect Joran Vandersloot's case negatively from a defense perspective? Because that's the benefit of having a good lawyer here in the United States. Yep. You've got this advocate in your corner. There you've got a judge. He's not in your corner.
Exactly, and it's one of the things that I think is fascinating for us and for our viewers to see that not all, countries throughout the world operate the same we do. They don't have the same legal structure. And I think one of the things that we have to ask ourselves here is whether Joran Vandersloot can even get a fair trial in Lima, Peru, given all of the attention that this case has gotten. And I wonder whether or not they have the same remedies that we do, such as change of venue, perhaps trying this case in another location apart from Lima.
Very good point. And Jean, let me ask you about that in terms of his fair trial, right? Just kind of exploring this issue a little bit. Is there anything, if the judge does most of the fact-finding here and the defense lawyer isn't as important, what then does a defense lawyer do on behalf of their client? Is their job just to kind of refute whatever the judge finds, or is the judge seen in Peru as this really impartial entity?
No, the defense can refute everything. They can ask to suppress things. They can say that they were declarations made against their client, that his due process rights were violated. Also of interesting to note that let's say the prosecutor wants Joran Vandersloot to answer some questions during this process. The prosecutor will submit the questions to the judge. The judge will submit them to the defense. Now, that's similar to the United States sometimes when it's looking at aspects of relevancy. But in the U.S., the defendant does not have to answer any questions. And here, the defendant doesn't also have to answer any questions. They don't. It may be looked down upon them for doing so, but they can decline. But this initial statement to the judge, they are required under criminal procedure to do so here in Lima.
Okay, so a lot of similarities there, except the fact that the judge is doing that fact-finding. And, you know, we've been hearing a lot about Castro Prison, where Joran Vandersloot is being held. Jean Casares went down there. She actually checked it out. Take a look.
This is the entrance to Castro, one of the highest security prisons in Peru. Some of the most violent offenders are housed here. We understand Joran Vandersloot is separated from the main prison body in a special wing with even higher security. And it's all very close to a working-class neighborhood right here in the outskirts of Lima.
All right, Jean, we just heard you talk about how close this prison is to the working-class neighborhoods in Lima. What can you tell us about the community reaction there, not only to this case in general, but to Joran Vandersloot in particular?
You know, Ryan, it took us 20-30 minutes to get there, and you finally are on a dirt road, a very bumpy dirt road to get to the entrance. And as you probably saw in the video, there's no sign that says it's Castro, simply a big signboard that says it's a penal institution, which you can't bring in. But there are children and there are families that live right next door. And when we arrived, all the children just came around us, and this one little girl in Spanish to me said, "I'm going to go to college." And it just touched my heart to hear her say that. And they didn't realize what was behind them. They didn't realize that it was Castro, one of the toughest prisons in Peru, so close to them. They were very naive to it, but their lives, they're very happy in their lives, and some of them have dreams for their future.
Wow. Wow. That's such a great story. And then when I think about Joran Vandersloot, you talked about possibly a change of venue, whether that could happen, whether or not he'll get a fair trial. This trial right now in Peru is all over the place. Gina showed us so many pictures of just newspapers, everything, talking about this case. If you're his defense lawyer, what do? You've got this insurmountable case going on from the evidence that we're hearing. You've got the judge doing the fact-finding. What's the first thing you do?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you attack the credibility of this supposed, right, as a defense attorney, supposed confession that he gave. And you say that perhaps this confession was coerced. I mean, for someone to be questioned for 10 hours with an attorney present, but I think by all circumstances we can agree that that attorney was there on behalf of the state. I mean, let's face it, this was someone who was court appointed. So I think the first thing to do is tactically try to throw out that supposed confession.
Okay.
If possible.
You know what? And speaking of that confession, I want to show our viewers something. We have a document that shows Joran Vandersloot signing his confession. Now, that's his signature line, and notice what you see right there, folks. It's a thumbprint. It's Joran Vandersloot's thumbprint. Jean, what do you make of this? In the Peruvian system, does this in any way affect the validity of his confession, that he puts that thumbprint right there, identifying that, yes, this, or maybe identifying that, yes, this is my confession?
I think you're exactly right. This is a document that we were able to get from our sources here in Lima. And when Joran Vandersloot actually went to Castro, he gave all of his fingerprints to the authorities, which is normal to do. But the fingerprint on the document, of course, I think you're right. It's an identifying mark that he is agreeing to this confession, because this is the confession. And it's 15 pages long at least, Ryan. It is very, very lengthy, transcribed by police, we should say, all in Spanish, but according to police, that is his thumbprint.
Wow, could be very damaging to Joran Vandersloot's case. Jean Casares reporting live from Peru.